확률이 높을 때는 비중을 늘려서 집중적으로 투자하라. 견고한 경쟁 우위, 즉 패자를 가진 기업에 투자하라. 새롭고 복잡한 사업보다 단순하게 이해할 수 있는 사업에 투자하라. 안전마진을 추구하고 차익거래 기회에 집중하라. 파브라이는 최고의 가치투자 접근 방식을 미래의 멀티베거를 찾아서 보유하는 것이라고 말했습니다. 멀티베거란 10년 이내에 10배, 20년 이내에 100배가 될 수 있는 비즈니스나 기업을 말합니다. 멀티베거가 되기 위한 4가지 발판을 이렇게 제시했습니다. 첫 번째, 매우 높은 투하자본 수익률 ROIC. 두 번째, 정직하고 성실한 경영진. 세 번째, 경쟁사들이 쉽게 진입할 수 없는 사업과 경제적 해자를 지닌 기업. 네 번째, 당신이 주식을 사는 가격. 내재 가치보다 훨씬 낮은 가격으로 주식을 매수하라는 얘기입니다. 1964년 6월 12일 인도 봄베이에서 태어난 모니시 파브라이는 공학도이자 IT회사의 CEO였는데요. 91년에 IT 컨설팅 및 시스템 회사인 TransTech.Inc를 세웠으며 2000년에 약 600만 달러에 매각했습니다. 99년에는 파브라이 인베스트먼트 펀드를 설립했고 2007년 워렌 버핏 회장과의 점심 식사를 65만 100달러, 현재 한화로는 약 8억 6천만 원 정도에 낙찰받았습니다. 버핏과 찰리 먼거의 경영전략과 투자 철학을 공유하며 현재까지 시장 수익률을 월등히 초과하는 성공적인 투자를 이어나가고 있습니다. 99년 파브라이 인베스트먼트 펀드는 100만 달러로 시작하여 23년에는 약 7억 달러의 자산을 운용하고 있습니다. 파브라이는 대만의 반도체 기업 마이크론을 집중 투자해왔던 것으로 유명했는데요. 최근 포트폴리오를 살펴보면 23년에 마이크론을 전량 매각했습니다. 최근에는 AMR, 콘솔 에너지, 아치 리소시스 등을 신규 편입하고 투자 중입니다. 이렇게 시장 수익률을 월등하게 아웃퍼폼한 모니시 파브라이가 옥스포드 재학생 Mz들에게 해준 인생 조언과 워렌 버핏을 직접 만나 느낀 점에 대해 이야기한 내용을 들어보도록 하겠습니다. 알파 컨덕터 채널 구독과 좋아요, 알림 설정하시면 최신 영상을 가장 빠르게 시청하실 수 있습니다.
One of the things that both you and Buffett talk about is managing your psychology. And one of the ways in which you do this is you have an inner scorecard, like a checklist of the things that are important to you. If you're comfortable, would you be able to tell us what's on your inner scorecard? And on top of that, would you be able to tell us how and when you knew that those were the right things to have on your inner scorecard?
Well, I think the inner scorecard is it's not a static kind of template, if you will. Basically, like when I met Buffett for lunch with my friend Guy Spear, he said to us that, would you rather be the greatest lover in the world, but known as the worst, or the worst lover in the world, but known as the greatest? And he said that if you know how to answer that question, you've got it made. Okay. So the inner scorecard for all of us is very straightforward. We always know what the internal correct answer is. We know that. We have a conscious and we know that. It's just that it's very tempting to live life with an outer scorecard, which is if people think I'm the greatest lover, well, let them think that. That's awesome. And that would be an outer scorecard way of living life. And so all you have to do is that when you encounter distortions between the inner scorecard and the outer scorecard, focus on the inner scorecard. And for each different type of, activity or conclusion or whatever you come to about something, your inner scorecard is really what should guide you. So, for example, if my fund is up 30% next year, everyone would be saying, oh, that was awesome. But what I have to do internally is ask myself, well, what was the risk I took? Was it risk-free? Was it truly a great return relative to, and was it the best opportunity cost in terms of where I could have put the money? These are questions I can answer better because I have underlying data, a lot richer underlying data. And so the easiest person to fool is to fool yourself. And you really have to make sure you're not fooling yourself. So an inner scorecard is a really important, it's a really huge advantage in life. live your life with an inner scorecard. What will happen is that if you live with an inner scorecard, you will become more trustable. You'll become more trustworthy. And if a lot of humans are willing to put a lot of trust in you, that's a starting point that's going to give you a huge edge in life.
That's a very, very, very thought-provoking answer. Thank you. I was hoping you could tell us a little bit more about the things you've learned from knowing Buffett personally that you would not have picked up from reading his books.
I don't know Warren that well. I mean, I've met him a few times, but I would say that I'm acquainted with him. I'm not a friend of his, but it's been interesting to observe him at close quarters sometimes. I think that's been so. I think the thing about Warren is that Warren is a lot of things about Warren Buffett you can get to without ever knowing him. He's one of the most open books you can think about. So, for example, and one of the things about humans is that the way we are at the age of 5, our personality templates, our likes and dislikes, our traits, between our genetics in the first 5 or 6 years of life experience, they are hard-coded. Between the age of 6 and 96, humans do not change. And once you understand that and you take that as a gospel truth, it becomes really easy to figure out which humans to interact with, which humans to have as your friends, and that sort of thing. So that's one data point, which is humans basically don't change. The second data point is that there's a gravitational pull. So if I hang out with people who are better than me, I'm going to get better. If I hang out with people worse than me, I'm going to get worse. So given that humans are not going to change, once I know the nature of the human, it will be wishful thinking to think that you're going to change them or something is going to improve in them. It is what it is. So being extremely picky on who your friends are is going to give you a huge advantage in life. So in the case of Buffett, he used to go to the Ak-Sar-Ben racetrack in Omaha when he was 9 or 10 years old. Ak-Sar-Ben is Nebraska spelled backwards. And what he used to do is at the end of the races, he'd pick up all the tickets that were on the ground, because they would be drunks who'd won something, but they wouldn't even know they won. They just tossed the ticket. And he'd go through each and every ticket to see if there were some tickets that were actually winning tickets that they were discarded. And he would find some winning tickets. But then he was too young to go to the window to collect. So he sent his Aunt Alice to collect for him. Okay. And he did this every weekend. Okay. And he was so it's a very dogged person who's going through that exercise of, because you would go through 500 tickets and find one, or 1,000 and find one. It's a needle in a haystack. In his mid-20s, he was going through the Moody's manuals. The Moody's manuals are these really thick manuals, which had like 4 companies, fine print on each page. And he was doing a quantitative assessment of thousands and thousands of companies. In fact, he went through the Moody's manuals 2 or 3 times. And in going through those, he found a bunch of extreme bargains. I don't think any of them were at the level of Resas. I still am one up on him. Okay. I don't think he found anything in the Moody's manual that could, and the reason for that is Resas is actually increasing value and whatever. But he found a bunch of, companies with a 15 million market cap making 25 million, something like that. Okay. So he found a bunch of these things. The activity that the kid at Ak-Sar-Ben was doing and the 25-year-old were doing are identical. Okay. It's the same activity. And then a few years back, Guy and I were visiting him in his office. And I saw that on his desk was the Japan Company Handbook, which is kind of like a value line of Japan, except it's just very quantitative, fine print, 2 companies per page, every listed Japanese business. And he was going, and this is, Berkshire's got 100 billion plus in cash. He's not going to move any needles by finding some company that's worth 25 million, but should be worth 50 million, or worth 100 million, should be worth 200 million. That's Berkshire can't do anything with that. But the kid is programmed that way. Okay. And so this was when he was maybe more than 80 years old. Okay. What he's doing at 9 and what he's doing at 25 and what he's doing at 80 are the same thing. Okay. And I actually, it was a coincidence, but I was going through the Japan Company Handbook at about the same time. I had the exact same edition as him. And I told him, oh, Warren, listen, I can make this faster for you. There are some companies I already found. And I took his Japan Company Handbook and I dog-eared some pages for him. Okay. I think he might have been horrified that somebody just, I didn't even ask him, oh, may I dog-ear it? I just went ahead and did it. I was so excited about it. And then, a lot of the dog ears were in the back of the book. He says, usually all the good stuff is in the back, So what I'm trying to say is that Warren is a very unusual person, but I think there are a lot of lessons to learn from him. I think most entrepreneurs, whether you go look at Sam Walton or Warren Buffett or Howard Schultz or Jeff Bezos, they're very intense in their pursuit and they're very singular in their pursuit. And when you have those traits, you're going to do very well. So a lot of people want to be Buffett. A lot of people want to clone Buffett. If you don't have the personality who would really enjoy picking up those tickets in Exarban, you're not going to get to being Buffett. So if somehow you have the personality and you can't do anything about it, you either have it or you don't have it. It's pretty binary. It's not something you can add on. Okay, there's no add-ons that happen. So I think the important thing for humans is you really have to understand who you are. And once you understand who you are, then you have to have behaviors that maximize the talent that you have. And your talents may be very different from Buffett. So you have to focus on those talents and those behaviors then.
That's a fantastic answer. Thank you for sharing that, Monish. I have one final question, and then after that, we can do some Q&A if we have the time. No worries if not. My final question is, I think, one that like a lot of us as students and as young people struggle with. We haven't had the experience or the time in our careers to have had mistakes and learn from them. So if you could compile all your years since you were back at university and think about the most important things that you've learned that you wish you had picked up earlier, what would they be if you could distill it into maybe 3 top things?
I mean, I would say that without failure, there's no success. So it's 2 sides of a coin. So I think generally speaking, when you look at people who've been very successful and you kind of peel the onion, you'll find that there were a lot of failures along the ways. And without those failures, those successes wouldn't have happened. Now, we are probably better off where we learn not from our mistakes, but from other people's mistakes. And if we can do that, then it's a lot less painful, right? But the nature of life is that our own mistakes get seared in deeper, and the lessons get seared in deeper. So in general, it is more difficult to learn from Warren or Charlie's mistakes and sear it in than it is from our own mistakes and sear that in. One of the things, I think Charlie says we're old too soon and wise too late. Last year, for example, when I first started investing in the mid-90s, I was trying to find these businesses with these long runways and, set it and forget it type of thing, like what Buffett had done with Coke or Amex and so on. And I found a bunch of those and I did really well. But then 99, 2000, the dot-com bubble was getting pretty intense and I was very concerned. And so I switched to Ben Graham, looking at businesses which were not necessarily great businesses, but they were very cheap and there was downside protection. You could make some money, kind of what Peter Thiel is saying not to do, and that did really well. I think from 99, probably I think if I had been smart enough to switch around 2012 or 2014, that would have been great. But I got so used to doing that, finding these bargains. It's a very natural, comfortable place to be. Then I realized last year when I was studying, there's a book called Richer, Wiser, Happier, which came out earlier this year. It's a great book. And chapter 6 is on Nick Sleep, who's in London and who's done really well as an investor. In fact, I think if you Google Nick Sleep, you can pull up his letters. They're well worth reading. And I realized that Nick had done really well by identifying some great long runways and then just leaving things alone. No activity. So when he shut down his fund, he had 3 stocks he put all his money in: Berkshire, Costco, and Amazon. And I think he's outperformed pretty much anyone else, no matter what they were doing, because Amazon's just done so well since then. And so I realized that actually I needed to go back to the engine, which is buying these great compounders. And I started to make my journey back. So I would say one of the things, if I could fix it, is that I shouldn't have abandoned the compounders as early as I did. I remember I think in 2002, I was taking a class at Harvard Business School, and we were doing a case on Amazon, and it was a case on Joy Covey, who was Amazon's CFO. Joy has actually unfortunately passed away. She had a biking accident, but wonderful lady. But this case was about her. She was the CFO at Amazon. And I was so impressed with Joy, and I was so impressed with someone like Jeff who would hire someone like Joy. And at that time, Amazon stock had collapsed. It had collapsed down to $10 a share. And I put 10% of my fund at the time in Amazon at $10 a share. And very quickly it got to 14 and I moved on. Okay. Very dumb. Okay. There can't be things that are more dumber than that. And that's like a 330x that got blown away. And I remember at that time I was managing about maybe 70, 80 million. So maybe even if 5 million went into Amazon at $10, 300 times 5 million is $1.5 billion. It wouldn't have mattered what happened to anything else, but we live and learn. And so life goes on. Life is great.
워렌 버핏이 9살 때 했던 습관이 25살, 80살 때까지도 이어졌다는 점이 인상적입니다. 워렌 버핏이 얼마나 집념이 있는 사람인지를 다시 한번 생각하게 되었고, 그러한 습관과 행동 양식이 그를 세계적인 투자자로 만든 것이 아닌가 생각하게 되었습니다. 내면의 성과표 이야기도 인상적이었습니다. 많은 사람들이 외부의 평가에 민감하고 그것에 쉽게 흔들리지만 세계적인 투자 거장들은 내면의 성과표를 가지는 것이 중요하다고 강조합니다. 즉, 투자 결정을 함에 있어 내부적으로 자신을 돌아보고 성찰하는 과정이 가장 중요하다고 믿는 것입니다. 그러한 끊임없는 자기 성찰과 냉철한 자기 분석이 성공을 이끄는 것이라고 생각됩니다. 모니시 파브라이 역시 사교성이 뛰어나고 대화 능력도 탁월하다고 생각했습니다. 옆집 아저씨 같은 인상이지만 이 형님 추진력도 뛰어나고 배울 점이 아주 많은 형님 같습니다. 친하게 지내고 싶네요. 분명히 워렌 버핏과의 식사에서 기부한 65만 $100 그 이상 뽕을 뽑았으리라 판단됩니다. 오늘 영상은 여기까지 하도록 하겠습니다. 다음 시간에 더 유익한 내용으로 찾아뵙겠습니다. 금융시장 초과수익 지휘자 알파 컨덕터였습니다.